Part of Magento's attribute system, along with having individual attributes that we can create and edit, we also have attribute sets. Currently, we only have the default attribute set because we haven't created any of our own attribute sets. To create a new attribute set, you go to Stores, and in the Attributes group, you click Attribute Set. And once again, we only have the default right now. Let's take a look at that just to get an idea of what an attribute set is and what it looks like. So we have a lot of things listed here. Of course, we're on the page purely for the default attribute set. And here we have all of the fields, essentially, that we can provide information for a product on our website. If we scroll down, we'll see this section specifically called Attributes, and it has our custom size attribute that we've created. Now, here's the thing about attributes. You don't always want all attributes available for every item on your store, because often you'll have different item types. In our case, we have coffee mugs. We're also, at some point, going to have coffee beans. And those two things obviously will need different sets of attributes. We don't want to have every attribute possibility listed for everything. For instance, size isn't going to make sense for coffee beans. We're probably going to also have something along the lines of roast, maybe like mild, medium, or dark roast for our coffee beans, which of course doesn't make sense for coffee mugs. So what we're going to do is create a new custom attribute set for mugs. What that means is we're also going to remove size from the default attribute set, because this isn't an attribute that we're necessarily going to want on all products. For the default attribute set, you really want that to be just any attribute that can apply to anything. So we're going to go ahead and remove that from the default and click Save. Notice we're using a drag and drop interface here. To remove something from here, as you just saw, you click and drag it over. To add something, you drag it from here on top of the folder, and it's added to your attributes. But we're going to take size. Sometimes it gets a little tricky. You have to make sure you get it right up where everything else is listed. We're going to remove size once again and save. Now we're back to our attribute sets screen. Now we're going to add an attribute set. The name of this will just be mugs, because this is, of course, the attribute set that's going to contain the attributes specifically for mugs on our website. You have to choose an attribute set that it's based on. Obviously, we only have one other right now, and we're going to choose default. Most of the time you will be choosing default unless you're using an attribute set that maybe, say, is based very closely on some other attribute set that you've created, maybe kind of considered a sub-attribute set. We'll save that. And now we're taken back to the attribute set customization screen. Of course, this time it's for mugs and not default. So we're going to scroll down once again and find our attributes folder. We're going to drag size onto that folder. And now size is part of our mugs attribute set. And there are a couple other things you can do here that we're not going to do, but I want to cover them just so you're aware of them. So first off, as I already described and demonstrated, this does use a drag and drop interface. You can also add a new group to your attribute set. So you can basically create something that's just like this attributes folder, but you can have another one. So you can have multiple groups that are similar to this, multiple groups of custom attributes. This is mostly useful if you have an attribute set that's particularly large or complex. In most cases, it's best just to keep everything in attributes. That way everything is kind of contained in one place and you don't have to go clicking all over the place to find things. You can also delete a group entirely. Again, this will mostly be for if you have added additional attribute folders, or attribute groups rather, then you would just click on the one that you want to remove and click delete selected group. And finally, as you just saw a second ago, if you select a group and then click on it again, you can rename it. Again, nothing that we need to do at this point, but just be aware that you can do those things. Renaming is really particularly useful if you have added new groups, so you know what the different groups are for. But for now, we've added size to the attributes of our mugs attribute set, and that's all we came here to do. So let's remember to save. And now we're going to go back to our products. So while we're doing this, I want to make a note. We've removed size from the default attribute set and created a new attribute set for mugs that does contain the size attribute. Let's recap what we've done and take note of a couple things. We've removed size from the default attribute set. You know that. You also know that we created a new attribute set for mugs that does contain the size attribute. Now, what happens to our products, namely these mugs that we've created, that we're using the attribute set that we altered, the default attribute set that we altered? When you have an attribute set in use on any products and you go and edit that attribute set as we've done, the product information on the products page does not go away until the next time you save that item. So if we click to edit either of these, we'll use the sunrise mug for example. We're still using the default attribute set currently, but if we scroll down, we'll see that there's no attribute group here anymore because the default set does not have any more custom attributes anymore. We took size away. However, if we open the customer view in a new tab, do a quick search for our sunrise mug, and go to it, we'll see that it still does have that information from that custom attribute that used to be in the default attribute set. Again, because we haven't saved it yet. Once I go back to the product and save it, it's now been saved with the new version of this default attribute set. And if we go back to the front end of the website and refresh the page, that will be gone as it is. So just keep that in mind. That's just sort of a side point to be aware of, because what we're going to be assigning now is our whole new attribute set. So back on our Sunrise Mugs product page, we're going to change the attribute set to mugs. And once we do that, we can scroll down and we have attributes. We have our size attribute back. We're going to type in 8 ounces and click save. Now we need to do this for our other mug. We're going to edit our on-the-go mug now. Change our attribute set from default to mugs. Scroll down. Open our attributes group. Change the size to 12 ounces. And save that one as well. Now that information is back on these products. So we kind of did this backwards if you've been following along with the previous attribute videos leading up to this one. Normally, what you would probably want to do is create new attribute sets even before you've created the attributes to put in them. Then, when you're creating new products, you would select that attribute set, and during the product creation phase, add an attribute then, because whenever you click add an attribute on a product, it automatically adds that attribute to the attribute set that that product is using. So again, we kind of did this backwards, but I wanted to approach it this way to first establish a solid understanding of what attributes are before we started playing around with attribute sets in this video. Finally, I'll just note that this workflow may seem a little bit complicated, but once you've done it just a couple times, it really does make sense.